take a look at call block pre-screening features, Panasonic Automated Call Block, and AT&T/Vtech Smart Call Blocker. These features screen callers to make sure they're a person by prompting them to press a key. Typical call blocking systems require you to save the number to a list. Or on Panasonic phones released in 2014 and later, with the exception of a few models, you can save whole area codes or number prefixes. Let's demonstrate Panasonic Automated Call Block first. So I'm going to call from this AT&T Smart Call Blocker phone, and I disconnected all of my other phones so it can really demonstrate the beauty of this feature. Because if I had my other phones plugged in, they would still ring. What's the point of blocking calls if your phones will still ring?
Thank you for calling. Please press 1 to connect your call.
So now I'm getting a prompt to press 1, and then the phone rings.
Call from cockpit line.
On 2020 and later models, you can press teleblock,
Please say your name.
a goose. Then, if you don't answer the call or you press block, you'll hear the following.
Your call will be disconnected now. Goodbye.
Now, I have no idea why that is not what it announces when a number is blocked. On 2013 and later Panasonic models, the caller just hears silence if they're blocked. I'm not sure why it no longer plays a busy tone like 2012 and earlier models, but it could be so that the caller thinks your number is broken. Because if a caller just hears silence, they might think a person picked up and they say, "Hello? Hello?" and no one responds, and suddenly hang up. And they keep trying and trying, and it keeps happening, and then they'll probably go, I guess this number's broken. I won't try again. But if the busy tone sounds, the caller knows the number is live. I've also seen some complaints on Amazon saying that the message the AT&T Smart Call Blocker plays to blocked callers causes callers to think the number is still safe and that they'll keep calling it. Although I don't really see why, because the message clearly states that they should hang up, because the number they're calling is not accepting their call. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look at the Panasonic first. So we just saw what happens when a caller is screened and they press the code to get through. So in this case, it was set to 1, but you can actually change this. So if we go here, we can change the code that the phone asks the caller to enter. So if we go to the automated call block menu, you can turn the feature on or off. Customize the list of allowed names. This means if you know the caller's name, save it to this list, and then they'll get through even if you don't know the number or if they use multiple numbers. Let's say your school or pharmacy or doctor's office. Those are the most common examples the AT&T manuals will give. Call from different numbers and consistent names. You can save the name and not worry about the numbers. Access code is where you change what code it asks you to enter to get through. So now I'm going to change it to 234. And now in doing this, I have cleared the invisible allowed number database. So when I press 1 to get through, my number was saved to that invisible database, so if I called again, I would not be screened. But since I just changed the code and triggered an erasure of the list, I now have to get screened again when I call again. Then I can change the greeting. So the default greeting is what you heard on the phone, and it includes the prompt to play the access code.
Thank you for calling. Please press 2, 3, 4 to connect your call.
But if you record your greeting and you play it back from the menu, you'll only hear the greeting you recorded. However, you do not need to include the access code in the greeting. However, The early versions of the manual for the KXTGE 6 series, which you can find on fccid.io/ACJ96NKX-TGE630, do instruct you to include the access code in the greeting. But I guess they decided that would be unnecessary, so they programmed it so that the code still plays with the automated message, even if you record your greeting, but they did not reprogram the actual playing of the greeting. So let's record a greeting and take a look.
Record greeting after the beep.
Now I'm going to call again, and on my ATAs I can press pound to redial.
Thank you for calling Tech with Tyler's phone testing call line. Your call is being screened to make sure you're in person. Please follow the instructions to be connected.
Please press 2, 3, 4 to connect your call.
Call from cockpit.
The ring cadence that the system generates is usually that of the country where the phone is sold and designed to be used. However, in Panasonic's case, this is a bit strange. The UK and Ireland models use the ring cadence of the rest of Europe, even though the UK and Ireland use a double ring. Now, this could be because I realized a few days ago that Panasonic likely uses the same software in all of their European models, with the only difference being the button labeling and the answering system language. But otherwise, it's the same. So I guess if that's true, they just go for the general European ring cadence. I don't know if that's the case for Australia and New Zealand. They also use a double ring. They only just got automated call block with the KXTGU4 series released last year in many different countries, and that marks the first time in a while where Panasonic released the same model, albeit different variants designed for different countries, in different countries at once. And there have been no videos, as far as I know, of the Australian or New Zealand automated call block. I wouldn't be surprised if they just go for the European implementation, because just like how the phone network in Australia and New Zealand typically follows European Telecom Standards Institute standards, or ETSI for short, Panasonic might have programmed it the same way. Because, I mean, the menus are similar to the European models. So now that I entered my code, I will not be prompted again. So now I'm going to call again.
Call from cockpit line.
Now you'll notice that there is a short first ring for calls that are not screened. And especially since my system, I programmed to use a double ring for extension-to-extension calls, that is, any numbers beginning with a 2, those are all of my extension numbers on my system, or any system with a double ring or non-standard ring cadence, or rather any ring cadence that's different to the automated call block ring cadence. You can tell it's a non-screened call if you hear the ring cadence your line uses versus the ring cadence that automated call block uses. The first ring is muted when call block pre-screening is on. So when we call, we don't get the first ring, and you cannot answer on that first ring. And the display does not light up or show anything during the screening process. Now let's take a look at AT&T Smart Call Blocker, where on most models it does display something when the call is being screened. So we're going to now make a call.
Hello, calls to this number are being screened by Smart Call Blocker. Please say your name after the tone, then press pound.
A stinky skunk.
Please wait a moment while your call is connected.
So the caller has to announce their name, and as you could hear, that name is announced instead of the talking caller ID voice.
To answer the call, press 1. To answer and always allow this number, press 2. To block this number, press 3. To send this call to the answering system, press 4. To repeat these options, press star.
These are the options you get when you answer a call in Screen with Caller Name mode. So I just answered the call by pressing 1, but unlike the Panasonic version of the feature, Automated Call Block, the number is not saved to the allow list, which can take a name and number. So I'm going to be screened again the next time I call.
Hello, calls to this number are being screened by Smart Call Blocker. Please say your name after the tone, then press pound.
If you press an incorrect key, you'll hear this.
Sorry, your input is not correct. Please try again. Hello, calls to this number are being screened by Smart Call Blocker.
And if you do this 3 times, it'll just hang up without any warnings or anything. Testing.
Please wait a moment while your call is connected.
To save it, you have to press 2. And then you hear the confirmation tone out of the earpiece, if that is what you're using. Now we're going to press 3 or call block to block the call. So you can press 3 or call block.
The number you are calling is not accepting your call. Please hang up.
And notice that blocking call appears. It appears on all handsets and the base, and they light up, which could be seen as a drawback if you have a handset in your bedroom, because of course you want to have your calls screened to make sure scammers don't get through, or at least the robots don't get through, but you wouldn't necessarily want the blocking call or call block screening messages to appear and light up the display while you're trying to sleep, and you want things to be dark. So now, when we try to call, it'll once again light up on all the handsets in the base saying blocking call, and you'll hear this message.
Calls to this number are being screened by Smart Call Blocker. The number you are calling is not accepting your call. Please hang up.
And it'll still say this number, even if I record a name. So unlike the Panasonic version, you can only record a name, not replace the entire message. So in the call block settings, you can turn it on or off, and the menus vary depending on the model. But generally, you have the ability to turn it on and off. You can customize your allow list, your block list, allow list, but some models don't have that. Start name list, which is your allow name list, and choose how your calls are handled. On some models, you can change it for without number calls and calls that are not saved in any list separately, while on others you'll only have 5 different profile options or other ways of configuring it. So you can screen with or without caller name, allow, send to the answering system, or block with a block announcement. So now we're going to set a name.
Record after the tone. Press 5.
And it sounds like the answering system. A goose.
Recorded.
And you do not have to record for 2 seconds because this is meant for a brief name, like John Smith, for example. Now we're going to call again, and we'll hear that recorded name. But first I have to take myself out of the block list.
Hello, calls to a goose are being screened by Smart Call Blocker. Please say your name after the tone, then press pound.
Goose.
Please wait a moment while your call is connected.
Option 4 will send the caller to the answering system.
Hello, please leave a message after the tone.
Hello, I'm leaving a message after the tone. (2012) and later models including the 2012 builds of the AT&T CL8 XXX1 series, introduced not only speed dial voicemail, so you can assign your voicemail number to the 1 key, but also changed how you set caller ID announce. Previously, you changed it for the handset and base by selecting handset or base, and the handset setting is stored in the handset itself, like you'd expect. However, they changed it, so now for the handset, it's stored in the slot corresponding to the handset in the base. So this means this is handset 1, but let's say I deregister the handsets and registered handset 2 as number 1 and this as number 2. So if I had previously set number 1 to off, the handset which I registered as number 1, which was number 2 before, will have it turned off instead of on. So as you can see, it links to the base for changing the setting. The reason why this is significant for Smart Call Blocker is that if you turn off all slots, and this includes those that are not registered, so if I turn the base and my 2 handsets off, slots 3 to 12 are still on, so this behavior that I'm about to describe won't apply. You have to turn all of them off. When all slots are off, the caller announcement is played when you pick up instead of as the caller announcement, because of course, caller announcement is off. So that's what you'd expect. So now, let's call and hear that.
Call from. To answer the call, press 1.
And when the menu
To
repeats,
answer and always
for
allow
example,
this
if you
number,
press an incorrect
press 2.
key,
Sorry, your input is not correct. Please try again.
the name repeats as well as the options.
Call from.
Now if we hang up, listen to what's going to happen to this menu.
To answer and always allow this caller has hung up.
This is something the manual does not document, and I did not know this did until I got this in September 2020. It'll say caller has hung up if the line power drops, aka loop current disconnect, or it hears a constant dial tone, busy tone, whatever. Just like how answering systems hang up. This way, you don't go to press 1 or 2 and just hear a dial tone or silence and go, hello, because the caller hung up. This also stops the screening process. Now I just switched to prompt it to just press pound, so the without caller name mode. On the models of the 5 profiles, that would be screen robot. So the 5 profiles are screen unknown, screen robot, allow unknown, unknown to ansys, or block unknown. So screen unknown is to prompt the caller to say their name and press pound, while screen robot only asks the caller to press pound. And that's equivalent to what I just set this phone to, screening without caller name. So now I'm going to call again, and the message that the caller hears will be different.
Hello, calls
This first part's the same.
are being screened by Smart Call Blocker. If you're a family member, friend, or invited caller, please press pound to be connected. If you're a solicitor, please hang up now.
So now I've always been confused by that last part, where it says, if you're a solicitor, please hang up now. If you know you're a solicitor by the time you're calling, why call in the first place? We don't want your calls if you're a solicitor. Or at least most of the time we don't.
If you're a family
You don't
member,
have to
friend,
wait for a
or
message to
invited
complete
caller,
before
please
pressing
press
pound.
Connected. Please wait
Note
until
that the
the
tone does
call
not
is
sound when this mode is on, when you set it to without calling name.
From main line.
Then it just works as if it was a non-screened call. Speaking of non-screened calls, turning Smart Call Blocker off and setting it to allow calls are not the same thing. If you turn Smart Call Blocker off, calls that are stored in the call block list will still ring through. So if you don't want screening, don't turn Smart Call Blocker off if you want call block. Instead, set the mode to allow. And that is the default on later versions of the 2017 models and all models since then. These early versions set it to screening and screening by default. And I guess people didn't like that, so they decided to change the default. And Panasonic has automated call block off by default, and you have to turn it on. So I bet most users aren't even aware that their phone can pre-screen calls unless they've looked at the manual. There is a drawback to AT&T and Vtech's mute first ring implementation. On the Panasonic phones, if the first ring is muted, the first ring you hear includes talking caller ID. However, that is not the case on the AT&T/Vtech version. The first ring you hear does not include talking caller ID. So when you turn it off, if you turn mute first ring off by pressing 7464# in the main menu or in call menu, or turn smart call blocker off, but this hidden mute first ring setting, which is not documented on the smart call blocker models at all, is off by default, you will not hear the caller ID announcement on the first ring you hear, and it won't even light up until the second ring. So this is so that the first ring you hear has caller ID, and so that you don't hear a ring at all for blocked calls. However, you won't hear the talking caller ID. So we're going to call.
Call from.
You can hear that we did not get the talking caller ID on the first ring I heard, even though this was the second ring to the caller. So if one of the reasons you mute the first ring is so that you get the caller ID announcement on the first ring you hear, Panasonic is the better way to go. By the way, on 2019 and later models, you get the block call count when you press call block to open the menu. On 2018 models, and I believe this still continues to this day on foreign models, on the European models, it takes you to the settings menu with automated call block selected, which is very strange. I don't know why they didn't just make a separate menu for that. You can turn the first ring off. Depending on the model, it'll be called first ring on off, or one ring for block call yes no. So you can turn that to off or no, and then the first ring you hear will include the call ID announcement, but that is unfortunately not the case on the AT&T and Vtech version, at least the smart call blocker models. So the default setting is smart call blocker on and the mute first ring setting off, but you can have it still mute the first ring even if you have smart call blocker turned off. And once again, it works the same way. You do not get the caller ID announcement on the first ring you hear. Also, note that if you mute the first ring, for non-screened calls or phones that don't have call block pre-screening at all, you may want to set the answering system to one ring more, because the caller gets the number of rings you set for the answering system, for example 4 rings, which is usually the default setting, but you only hear 3 rings in that case. So you have one less ring to run to the phone and answer it. So if you want your end to give you the number of rings you want, for example 4 rings, you'll actually want to set it for 5 rings. In fact, that's how we have our phone set. We have the first ring set to off, but that means we would only get 3 rings. We used to have it set to toll saver, which means certain number of rings if you have new messages, a few more rings if you don't have new messages, so you can hang up without being charged for the call if you're using a service that charges you for calls. But now we just have it on 5 rings so that the 4 rings we hear have caller ID. Panasonic is definitely the better brand when it comes to overall call blocking features, because not only do you now have automated call block on most 2018 and later models, but again, Australia and New Zealand didn't get it until last year, 2024, and Europe, UK, and other ETSI standard countries did not get it until 2019. You can also block whole area codes with number prefixes, and on the KXTGF9 series, like my KXTGF 970 series, it has a 14,000 number database of pre-installed blocked numbers, as they say. Pre-installed call block database, I think is how I say it. Pre-blocked numbers, in simpler terms. And these are numbers that you cannot view or delete or add to. So, you will not know what these numbers are until you get a call from them and it blocks it. If you find that that number, one of those numbers, becomes safe in the future, I found that you can save it to a phone book. And you can know what this number is if you have another phone or your TV or whatever shows caller ID, because those numbers will not even show up in the caller list. Panasonic basically wants you to forget that those numbers even exist. Although this could prove to be a problem if 911 call centers spoof one of those 14,000 numbers. You may miss 911 callbacks, but those only happen if you hang up if 911 answers. So my advice to you in that case is stay on the line and say, hey, it was a mistake, if that's why you hung up quickly after calling 911. That's what I've done if I've accidentally called 911, and now I know not to do that. Automated call block has worked the same since Panasonic introduced it in 2018. The only change they made in 2019 is that it once again goes to the call block menu when you press the call block button, and it shows the call block count. The call block count increases with every use of a button, not just when a call comes in from an already blocked number, and there's now a call block tone when you block calls. And if you've blocked 50, 100, 150, etc. calls, you'll get an achievement tone. So listen to this. So that is without the achievement thing coming up. I did reboot the base. Oh, I had cleared the call block count. That's why it didn't go off. Let's take a look at it on this TGU, where I do have plenty of calls blocked. First, we have to reboot its base. Speaking of clearing the block call count, it counts up to 65,000, not including the comma. Yes, I did test this by getting the count up to 1,000. So now I can clear it, and now it shows up as 0. And this is separate from the count for automated call block. This counts up for any caller who has waited out the prompt and did not enter the code. So most likely this was an automated call, or someone who just decided not to enter the code. Oh, I selected key detector. That's a cool accessory that they apparently discontinued. You can attach it to your key ring and then use the handset to make it beep. So let's go here, and we can see this count is different than the regular call block count. So here's what the achievement tone sounds like. And it says over 50, 100, 150, so on, blocked. So this is what it's like to block a call. And once again, the caller just hears silence. And so they may think your number is broken. On Panasonic models before 2013, the busy tone used is the intercom busy tone, which sounds like this. On the 5.8ified DECT models, on AT&T and Vtech, pre-smart call blocker, or non-smart call blocker I should say, since they still have some without, especially very budget models, the call block busy tone is a simulated US busy tone, or North American I should say, because Canada uses the same telephony tones as we do here in the US, and Canada models are the same aside from being able to change the voice prompt language for the answering system. I'm not sure if BT or Telstra or other cordless phone brands had busy tones for their non-call block pre-screening implementation of call block, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just used the busy tone of the country or one of the countries the phone is designed for. Now that I blocked the number with automated call block turned on, if I were to call from that number and then answer the call, I would be in that line monitoring glitch state, which is how I was able to show FSK tones a few videos ago. It's very important to note that for calls on the cell line on a Bluetooth cell phone linking model like this, automated call block and smart call blocker are not applicable. The only blocking that there is if a number is stored in the call block list. On Panasonic, it'll send the reject action to the cell phone, and on Vtech and AT&T Smart Call Blocker, it actually will play the blocked call announcement through the cell line, and this is very rare to have an automated announcement or automated system that works on the cell line. Panasonic had, in 2006, some Panasonic KXTH cell phone linking models where the answering system could work on the cell line. However, this is not the case on pretty much every cell phone linking model available today. That was basically a one-off, unfortunately, but it would be cool if they could add that again. I should also mention that for the allow name list / star name list, or whatever your brand calls it, the name you put in the list, and by the way, on Panasonic, you cannot manually add, you can only do this from the color list. You have to store the beginning of the name exactly as it appears in the caller ID. AT&T says if the first 15 characters of the caller name matches an entry on the star name list, the call will ring straight through. So it's if the beginning of the caller name, so the first 15 characters of it, matches, I guess, the entirety of the star name list entry, it'll ring through. On Panasonic, of course, the count doesn't matter because you can only add to it by saving from the caller list. The drawback there is that you have to know the name of the caller in advance, or in Panasonic's case, after a call has already come in from them. And you'll want to make sure that you put allowed names and numbers into your allowed name list / star name list, or whatever your brand calls it, or into your phone book / directory, or your allowed numbers list / database. In the Panasonic case, since it's an invisible database, you do not want to rely on this as your only safe list for allowed callers, because not only can you not see the numbers on this list and it erases when you change the code that it prompts callers to enter, but it deletes the oldest number when the 101st caller calls. So it only stores up to 100 numbers and drops the first entry when a new one calls, just like how the caller list works. So, for example, this can store 50 calls. When the 51st call is received, the first caller is dropped. Also note that in most cases, this feature does not work on place-on-base power backup. I say in most cases because on the 2017 builds of the CL series, the feature does work during place-on-base power backup, but it's very flaky, as I showed in my power backup video, or as I explained in my power backup video. It somehow managed to work properly. But in AT&T Vtech's case, it's even worse. All call blocking won't work, even for numbers stored in a call block list. Exception is one-touch call block, which will play the announcement, or it won't play the announcement actually, it'll just do like a second of silence and hang up, or even a split second of silence and then hang up. That's how it works. So if you had the 2015 version, and I'm not sure if call block works on that when the power's out, probably it does, because it's just basic call block of the simulated busy tone, then you'll be disappointed if you upgrade to the newer one and find out that call block does not work during a power failure if you expected that to work. Then again, place-on-base power backup is really meant for calling during a power failure in an emergency, really. So don't expect all of your features to work. As I showed on the Panasonic, you cannot answer during the first ring or during the screening process with automated call block turned on. However, on the AT&T, you can, but of course, you won't see that the phone's ringing unless, of course, your TV shows caller ID or that a call's coming in, or if you have other phones on the line. Of course, your TV would show caller ID most likely the moment the phone starts ringing, because the reason caller ID does not come in until a second ring is because that FSK tone is sent after the first ring in the US and Canada. But this depends on your country. It may come in before it even starts ringing. And that's a look at Panasonic Automated Call Block and AT&T/Vtech Smart Call Blocker. We'll show the AT&T/Vtech answering system voice guide and smart call blocker voice guides in another video.